Link TV, and on Direct TV, Channel 375. And we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headline's also available in Spanish for any radio station to take us over 250R. We're talking today about Elena Kagan, but also about much more. We're joined by Charles Ogletree, professor of law at Harvard Law School and the founding executive director of the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice at the university. He's known Elena Kagan for 25 years. He's special counsel to President Obama and has written a number of other books. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
It's very good to have you with us.
I'm glad to hear Miles Davis and not Charles Davis.
So why don't we start with Elena Kagan?
Sure.
You have known her for 25 years. In what capacity?
She was a student at Harvard when I started teaching there in 1985, and I knew her as a brilliant Harvard Law Review editor. She actually worked on a phenomenal piece that my mentor and teacher, Derek Bell, wrote about the Civil Rights Chronicles. I knew her when she was applying to the law school as a tenured professor. I knew her when she worked in the Clinton administration. I was very glad, and exceedingly glad, when she was selected as our dean in 2003.
Now, there have been some criticisms that her record while at Harvard Law School, especially in terms of diversity, wasn't something to write home about in terms of the diversifying the faculty there. Your sense of that track record?
I've been very clear. Elena Kagan did what she could do, and I think people sort of overstate the power of a dean, particularly at Harvard Law School. She was really trying to herd cats the 6 years she was dean, and she had the right to recommend candidates, but the faculty had the right to vote on them up or down. We actually did offer tenure to diverse candidates, African American and Latino, who didn't come. They had great positions at other universities. They did not come to Harvard, and that's not counted because they didn't come. But no one worked harder to increase the number of students. She increased the number of students of all groups of color from 2003 to 2009. She increased the public interest program. She also reached out to encourage more faculty to come. And I celebrate the fact that she made an important dent in what we're trying to do at Harvard.
Didn't Derek Bell quit Harvard because he said he wouldn't come back until a woman was granted tenure?
He surely did in 1990. And I actually offered to quit as well. I didn't have tenure. And I said, Derek, my wife and I have thought about this. I am a lawyer. I can try a case. I'll resign in support of you. He said, stay there. That was 1991 when he left. And Lonnie Guinier was appointed in 1998. And I'm happy to report that a great Harvard Law School graduate and professor here in New York, Annette Gordon-Reed, has accepted a tenured position this year. She'll be coming to Harvard next year. She's the one who won the Pulitzer Prize for a book about Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. And so we're diversifying all the time. We can do a better job, no doubt about it, but we are going in the right direction. And we have another woman who's dean, Martha Minow, who was one of the most spirited, engaging, and productive people I ever known. So I think it's looking good.
The questioning that some of the snippets that we played in terms of the issue of the military recruiting at Harvard, what is your recollection of what happened and Elena Kagan's role and how the impact of that debate on the Harvard community? Well,
let me lay my cards on the table. I was on the committee at Harvard Law School that set down the policy, the non-discrimination policy against all of our students in the 1990s, the placement committee. This is before Elena Kagan was on the faculty as a professor, and certainly before she was dean. And we said we will not allow any employer to discriminate against any of our students at all. And Elena Kagan inherited that policy that Bob Clark had applied before her as dean and that Jim Vornberg had applied before her as dean. And so it wasn't Elena Kagan's policy. She was following what we ordered her to do, and that is to treat all our students the same. After 2001, remember, all of us were saying that we wanted to do what we can to defend our country. I lost friends here in New York with the bombing, the terrorist attack at the Twin Towers. And so our policy was that there were students, regardless of their sexual orientation, who wanted to be patriotic, who wanted to fight for their country, and should not have been denied that opportunity because of their sexual orientation. She wasn't creating the policy. She wasn't expanding the policy. She was applying a policy that the faculty across the board supported. And more importantly, if you look at her history, students who were not gay, who were not lesbian, who were part of the military supported her because she was a fair and conscientious dean. I think Senator Sessions is way off board criticizing her in 2010 for a policy she inherited, and I think she actually acquitted herself well in responding to his questions and others.
I haven't understood why it isn't more simply dealt with when the senators challenge her on this issue of not supporting the military, because they even take out the gay and lesbian issue. They now make it that she was against military recruiters. Why she doesn't say, I'm so for the military that I want more people to be able to be in the military.
And she actually said that. In fact, she said our numbers went up. More students, as I said, students who, after 2001, wanted to support our country in a candid way, more public interest activities during her tenure as dean. So the good news is that more people involved. And I bet there are people who are in the military who didn't disclose their sexual orientation because they wanted to be patriotic and not be condemned or excluded because of their sexual orientation.
And now we want to talk about your mentor, Thurgood Marshall. Republican lawmakers repeatedly claimed that Elena Kagan would become a so-called activist judge, citing her ties to Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American Supreme Court justice. Kagan clerked for Marshall during the 87-88 term. Marshall's name was mentioned 35 times during the opening day of Kagan's confirmation hearing. Jeff Sessions is the ranking Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Importantly, throughout her career, Ms. Kagan has associated herself with well-known activist judges who have used their power to redefine the meaning of words of our Constitution and laws in ways that, not surprisingly, have the result of advancing that judge's preferred social policies and agendas. She clerked for Judge Migva and Justice Marshall, each well-known activist, and she has called Israeli Judge Aaron Barak, who has been described as the most activist judge in the world, as her hero.
That was Jeff Sessions. Your response?
Well, the comments by Senator Sessions and others, with all due respect, are really despicable, because he's right. Thurgood Marshall was an activist. He was an activist who said we can't have a society that separates people on the basis of race. He's going to fight against a segregation policy, and he won in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, led by his mentor, Charles Hamilton Houston, who helped train him. He won 29 out of 32 cases before an all-white, all-male, very cautious Supreme Court to level the playing field. That's an activist. And as a justice, he didn't write opinions by himself. He had to get the agreement of 8 other people to be in the majority. So it wasn't as if Marshall was out there alone. And he was an extraordinary lawyer who grew up in Baltimore in segregation, who went to a black college, Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, who wanted to go to the University of Maryland Law School. He could not. Not because he wasn't qualified, but because he was black. The activist lawyer from Howard, top graduate, went to Maryland, filed a lawsuit with Charles Hamilton Houston. They won. He opened up doors in Maryland to black students that he could not get in as a law student. That's the activism to change America from what it was before Brown and change it to what it should be, a society that judged people, as Dr. King said, on the quality of their character, not the color of their skin. That's his activism. He never wrote opinions about, you know, I don't care about the law, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do, and won because he had to convince 8 other people. And I think he's been, there's been character assassination these past few days, and it upsets me and any fair-thinking American about how they have treated a great American hero. His son, John, U.S. Marshal, his son, Goody, an attorney, Justice Marshall believed in law, believed in the role of police, and the fact that he was a, quote, liberal justice is no way to disparage him, because he helped change America's law that allowed people like me to go to places like Stanford, to go to places like Harvard, to be on the faculty. He couldn't do it, but he opened up doors for others. So I celebrate his life. I don't condemn it.
What about the issue in terms of Kagan, that obviously Justice Marshall had not had judicial experience, but he tried lots of cases before he was named to the Supreme Court. She has neither had judicial experience nor a track record of actually even being involved in arguing cases in the court. So
it's a great question. Let me tell you why it's important. Marshall actually was a judge. He was on the Second Circuit. He was the first black on the Second Circuit. He also was the first African-American who was also the Solicitor General. No woman before Elena Kagan had held it. Why is this appointment so important to have a non-lawyer, a non-judge as the Supreme Court Justice? Let's think back to 1954. Every one of those justices, every one, came from some other part, academia,